Hello, Michael.
Hello, hello.
Thank you for accepting this interview.
Hmm.
You have dedicated your life to sharing the spiritual teachings and practices of Ramana Maharshi through your articles, books, videos, websites, and meetings.
Yeah.
And could you explain and could you tell us who was Ramana Maharshi and what is the core essence of his teaching?
Um, the core essence of his teaching is is that we are not this body. We are the pure being awareness. So who was he or who is he? He is that pure being awareness.
Mm,
He is our own reality, our own uh, what we actually are is is what appeared outwardly in the form of Bhagavan Ramana.
mm,
And he appeared outwardly in that form in order to tell us to turn within, to in order to subside and merge back into that reality, that pure being awareness, Satchit.
mm. And he delivered a kind of teaching or method. And can you explain what was this method or self-inquiry or self-investigation?
Yes, that is, it is something very simple, even too simple to be called a method, really.
Mm,
Um, that is, now we are aware of ourselves as I am this body. But this body, and the body includes not just the physical form of the body, but also the life, the mind, the intellect, and the will that operate within it. So we are now identifying ourselves with something other than what we actually are. Why this body is not what we actually are, we are aware of this body only in the waking state. In dream, we're aware of some other body. In sleep, we're not aware of any body. But in all three states, we are aware I am. So what we actually are is that fundamental awareness I am, which is what is often referred to as Sat Chit. Sat means being in the sense of pure being, and Chit means awareness in the sense of pure awareness. So what we actually are is pure being awareness. But now we have wrongly identified ourselves as I am this body. Of course, the pure being awareness doesn't ever identify itself as anything other than itself. But there is a spurious entity called ego that rises as I am this body. So what we now experience ourselves as is this I that identifies itself with a body. This is ego. This is a false awareness of ourself. It's an awareness of ourself as something other than what we actually are. So in order to remove this false awareness, the only way to get rid of a false awareness is by correct awareness. We need to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. When we're aware of ourselves as we actually are, we cannot mistake ourselves to be anything but we are not. So the aim of self-investigation, Atma-vichara, is to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. In order to be aware of ourselves as we actually are, we need to attend to nothing other than ourselves. That is, it is only when we rise as ego that we're aware of the semi-existence of other things. So long as we're aware of the appearance of anything other than ourselves, we are experiencing ourselves as I am this body, and therefore we are ego. So this I that is now aware of itself as I am this body, and that is consequently aware of other things, needs to turn its entire attention back towards itself in order to know itself as it actually is. And Bhagavan has revealed that the nature of ego is to rise, stand, and flourish by attending to things other than itself, but to subside and dissolve back into its source by attending to itself alone. So the practice that Bhagavan taught us, method, if you want to call it such, is this practice of self-investigation. That means turning our attention back towards ourselves. Why I said even to call this a method is it's something too simple even to be called a method. What is the method to see the computer screen that is in front of you? The method is to look at it. Likewise, what is the method to know ourselves? We need to look at ourselves. Obviously, we cannot see what we actually are by means of our physical eyes. The eyes by which we see ourselves is the eye of awareness. So we need to turn our awareness, our attention, back within to see ourselves as we actually are.
But there's a question here. Where to look? Because
don't look anywhere other than at yourself.
Mm.
That is, we are not investigating any object. We're investigating the subject.
Mm. Okay. Is it a kind of concentration practice because we are focusing on the subject?
I suppose we could call it concentration practice, but a concentration, I mean, we can concentrate on anything. Generally, we concentrate on those things that interest us. If we're watching a film that captures our interest, we concentrate on that film. We are not distracted by other things because we're interested in the film we're watching. Or if we're reading a book and the book interests us, we concentrate on that and don't attend to other things. So, but it's not, I wouldn't call it a concentration exercise. Our aim is just to know what we actually are. And in order to know what we actually are, we need to look at ourselves very carefully. Look at ourselves, as I say, that means to attend to ourselves very carefully. So we are not attending to any object because all objects are things other than ourselves. We are attending to the subject. The subject is ego. But our aim in attending to a subject is to know the reality of the subject. For example, if you see something lying on the ground and it looks to you like a snake, but you're not absolutely sure that it's a snake, but so long as the idea that it may be a snake is there, there's some fear. So how to remove that fear? You need to see what it actually is. If it's actually a snake, then your fear is justified. But is it actually a snake? So you need to look at it carefully to see what it actually is. If you look at it carefully enough, you'll see, oh, it's not a snake, it's just a rope. Likewise, if we look at the subject, namely ego, carefully enough, we will see that what this ego actually is just the pure being awareness.
Maybe just for clarification.
Yes.
When you say we look for the ego, is it looking to the apparent, the thing that we think it's ourselves, and we just look at the object to find if it's the subject?
Yes, we are just attending to the subject. As ego, we take us, we think, we experience ourselves as if we're this body, as if we're this mind. So but our aim is not to attend to this body or mind because these are objects known by us. Anything that is something known, anything that appears and disappears in our awareness has to be something other than ourselves. So this body appears in waking state. Some other body appears in dream. No body or world or any object appears in sleep. So we are trying to attend not to any object, but only to the subject, that in whose view all these objects appear. That's why Bhagavan often expressed the investigation in terms of investigating to whom does all this appear.
It's kind of letting go of all the objects to
Yes, but
find the subject.
yes, but in order to let go of the objects, we need to hold on to the subject, because the nature of ego is to be always holding on to something, always attending to something. So in order to let go of everything other than ourselves, we need to attend to ourselves alone. We need to hold on to ourselves, hold on to our own being.
So it reminds me maybe of the Neti-neti approach. Is it the same, or excuse me for my ignorance?
No, it's perfectly okay. It is, this is not the neti-neti approach. This is the iti-iti approach. That is, neti means, iti means thus. So neti means not thus. What we are not trying to, that is what neti-neti refers to is the analytical process by which we reason and understand, but we are not any object. We are not this body. We're not this mind. We're not anything that appears and disappears. This is the neti-neti approach. But this is just a conceptual analysis. We can't know ourselves merely by understanding, but we are not this or that. Because who is it that understands I am not this body? It is the I that is aware of itself as I am this body. So the understanding I am not this body is a superficial understanding. Our actual experience is I am this body. I mean, we clearly feel ourselves limited within the confines of this body. And we are so attached to this body. If this body is in danger, if we're crossing a road and suddenly a vehicle comes towards us quickly, we get a shock and we're afraid and we try and get out of its way because we take ourselves to be this body. So this ego, the false awareness I am this body, it's an actual experience. It's what we throughout the waking and dream state, we experience ourselves as a body. But not only in this waking state, also in dream. In dream, sometimes we find ourselves maybe on the edge of a precipice, and we're too afraid to go down, and climbing up we're also afraid because we may slip and fall. So we feel fear because at that time, that dream body is what we experience as I. So merely this neti-neti is necessary as a prelude to the investigation. Because if we take ourselves to be this body and we're told to investigate ourselves, we'll start investigating the body. So the neti-neti approach is very necessary as a prelude because it provides us with the understanding of what we are not. And that enables us to infer what we are. If we are not any of these objects, then we can only be the subject. So neti-neti helps us to distinguish ourselves from other things. But that's, as I say, it's only a conceptual, it's only at a level of understanding. But we're not simply seeking a right understanding. We are seeking to actually be aware of ourselves as we actually are. So when we are analyzing neti-neti, we are thinking about the body, the mind, and everything, and we're thinking why these things are not what we actually are. But in self-investigation, we are not to think about anything that we are not. We are to think, to attend only to ourselves. That's why I said it's not neti-neti, which is about things other than ourselves. It's iti-iti, which is about ourselves.
Can we say that it's like self-abidance, just staying in the self?
Yeah, self-abidance means being ourselves. ourself in this context implies what we actually are. We are always, of course, ourself. There's never a moment when we are not ourself. But when we rise as ego, we seem to be something other than what we actually are. But as Bhagavan explained, the nature, as I said earlier, Bhagavan revealed that the nature of ego is to rise, stand, and flourish by attending to things other than itself. So long as we, throughout the waking and dream state, we're constantly attending to things other than ourselves. But this same ego that feeds itself on attending to other things, if that ego turns its attention back on itself, its nature is to subside. Subside back where? Subside back into its being, which is the source from which it rose. So in order to be as we actually are, we need to attend to ourselves. So long as we're attending to anything other than ourselves, we're rising. So self-abidance means the state of not rising, just being as we actually are. In order to just be as we actually are, we need to attend to ourselves.
And to attend to ourselves means that we have to try to find it.
Well, it's not even a matter of try to find it, because anything that we need to try to find is something we don't know now. But we always know ourselves. There's never a moment when we don't know ourselves. So as Bhagavan said, self-knowledge is not a new knowledge to be attained. Because if it were a new knowledge to be attained, whatever is attained will be lost. What we are trying to do is to know what we actually are, and thereby to remove the false awareness of what we are not.
And I believe that there's another practice or another wing of the practice that is called self-surrender. What's the difference with self-investigation? Is there a difference, or is it the same?
It's the same. It's the same, because as I say, by attending to ourselves, we subside. We as ego subside. That subsidence of ego is self-surrender. But we want to find a difference between self-surrender and self-investigation. The difference is we cannot investigate ourselves. That is, we cannot attend to ourselves without thereby surrendering ourselves. But the path of surrender begins prior to self-investigation. That is, on the path of devotion, we want to surrender ourselves to God. And when we try to surrender ourselves to God, we find the first thing that stands between us and God is our will. Whatever happens, it's God's will. But many things that happen to us, we don't like. We want something else. So long as we are constantly exercising our will, liking this, disliking that, that is not the state of surrender. So long as we have holding on to a separate will of our own, so long as we hold on to our likes and dislikes and desires and attachments and hopes and fears, we are thereby separating ourselves from God. We are wanting something other than what God wants. So that's why the path of surrender begins with surrendering our will. So what surrendering our will means we try to give up our likes and dislikes. Whatever happens, it is the will of God. So your will is my will. That is happiness for me. We shouldn't want anything other than what God wants for us. And whatever happens to us, nothing can happen without God's will. So on the path of devotion, surrender begins with trying to surrender our will to God. That's why if we are doing some action, we try to do it not for desiring some result. We are doing it just for the love of God. So this is the beginning of the path of surrender. But if we progress along this path of surrender, we will find we can never completely give up our likes and dislikes and desires and so on. We can reduce them to a considerable extent, but we cannot give them up entirely, because it's the very nature of ego to have likes and dislikes. So in order to surrender our will completely, we need to surrender ourselves. So long as we remain as a separate individual, we will have a separate will of our own. So the path of self-investigation is the pinnacle of the path of surrender. It's where surrender ultimately leads. And the surrender can be complete only by means of self-investigation. Because we cannot surrender our will or surrender anything else completely without surrendering ourselves. And we cannot surrender ourselves by any means other than self-investigation.
Maybe for clarification,
Yes.
is it self-surrender? Is it like to let the flow of life happen without intervention?
Yes, yes. Yeah, whether we let it happen or not, life is going on. We cannot change it, but we always want to change it. I want this, I don't want that. This is constantly, if we observe our will, how our will is functioning, we are constantly wanting something other than what is now presented to us. We are now in poverty, so we want wealth. We are sick, so we want health. The nature of ego is to be always dissatisfied. Nothing in this world can satisfy us. Some people have desire for wealth, some people have desire for name and fame, other people have desire for just leading a quiet life, some people have desire for learning a lot, or whatever it is. But wherever we seek happiness, we'll be frustrated, because the true happiness doesn't lie in anything outside ourselves. So we need to wholeheartedly accept things as they are. This is an essential part of surrender. So long as we are unable to accept things the way they are, we are constantly asserting our own will. So we're trying to give up our will. So whatever happens, nothing can happen except by the will of God. That is, on the path of devotion, we understand God is infinite. So he's infinitely powerful. He's omnipotent. He's infinitely, there's nothing, his knowledge is infinite. So he's omniscient. His love is infinite. So he's omnibenevolent. His presence is infinite. So he's omnipresent. So we understand this is the nature of God. Because God is all-knowing, nothing can happen without his knowledge. Because he's all-powerful, nothing can happen without his consent. And because he's all love, nothing can happen that is not good for all concerned. So we all undergo so many difficulties in life. But whatever difficulties we undergo, we need to understand these are difficulties given to us by God. So since they're given to us by God, it's for our own good that we are put through these difficulties. Because the difficulties we face in life are very good opportunities for us to learn surrender, to accept however much difficulty I have to face, it's all his will, let me accept it. So just accepting life as it is, that's an integral part of surrender. And this is very, very important. We shouldn't think, oh, I can skip this path of surrender, I'll take straight to the path of self-investigation. Because so long as we have strong likes, dislikes, desires, and so on, we will not be willing to turn within. So surrendering our will, learning to accept things as they are, is essential, because then only we are willing to let go of things. And if we are not willing to let go of everything other than ourselves, we won't be willing to hold on to ourselves, because by holding on to ourselves, we are thereby letting go of everything else.
Mm. And this self-surrender, isn't it um, like removing all the dust on what we are, and it makes, maybe I have the feeling that it makes more clear the object of the inquiry.
Exactly, exactly. The dust you refer to is our desires and attachments. So long as we have strong desires and attachments, they cloud our mind and is constantly pulling our mind outwards. By this path of surrender, we are gradually purifying the mind. We are giving up our desires and attachments. That is, we are cleansing ourselves of the dirt. When the dirt is cleaned, what remains is clarity. It's dirt that makes everything murky. So take a person who's very arrogant, has very strong desires, attachments, and so on. Such a person will be very selfish because they're blinded to the uh, to the to feelings of others. As we become more and more purified, as we give up our own likes and dislikes, we'll be less selfish. We'll be more we'll naturally feel more concern for others. When we see someone else suffering, it pains us. That's if we're on this, if our mind is purified at least to some extent. But for a person with a very impure mind, why should I worry about this person suffering? All that matters is me, me. That is a very strong ego, full of arrogance, full of greed and attachment and desire and so on. That is a very impure mind. The more we learn to surrender our will, the more our mind is thereby purified. And the more it's purified, the clearer it becomes. And so unless we have at least a certain degree of purity, none of us are perfectly pure. I mean, we all know, if we're following the spiritual path, we know better than anyone else all our own defects. But but we need at least a certain degree of purity, at least enough purity to recognize our own impurities. It's because if we don't have a sufficient degree of purity, firstly, we will feel no inclination to go to try and turn our attention within, because we'll only be concerned about other things and what other things can do for me. We're not really, we won't be willing to turn within to see who we actually are. That's one thing. We won't have the will to investigate ourselves. Secondly, we won't have the clarity. Like some people, when you try to explain why we are not the body or mind or we're not any object, they just don't get it. They can say, but if I'm not this or this, then what am I? What am I? Where is this I? I don't see any I there. Because they're thinking I has to be some sort of object.
Mm.
That's why many people find it very difficult to. What Bhagavan has taught is extremely simple, but we need a certain degree of clarity in order to understand what he's saying, to recognize what it is we have to attend to. And that clarity comes with purification. That's why Bhagavan, this path of surrender is generally called the path of bhakti. Bhakti means devotion or love. The path of investigation is called the path of knowledge, the path of jnana. Bhagavan has made it clear bhakti and jnana are inseparable. In fact, he often used to say, bhakti is the mother of jnana. In other words, without that intense love to know and to be what we actually are, we cannot know what we actually are. So we must, and we certainly won't be willing to surrender ourselves. So this bhakti and jnana are inseparable. the heart of the path of jnana is bhakti. The, the, the flowering of bhakti is jnana.
And is there an end for the practice or for the practitioner? Maybe is
Yes,
there, yes.
The end of the practice is the end of the practitioner. So long as there's a practitioner, in other words, so long as there's an ego, we haven't reached the end. Only when ego ceases to exist, or rather when ego is seen to be ever non-existent, then the practice comes to an end.
And to go back to the practitioner
Yes.
before this
Yes.
this stage, in everyday life, how can the practitioner practice effectively? Does he meditate 1 hour a day or every day long? How can it be put on a timetable? I don't.
Bhagavan gives a simple answer to that: always. When he defines what he means by Atma-vichara, self-investigation, he says Atma-vichara is always keeping the mind on oneself. So it's not just a matter of 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, or anything. Our aim should be to be constantly self-attentive. He also talks about nirantara swarupa smarana, uninterrupted self-remembrance. So our aim should be to hold on to this self-remembrance or self-attentiveness throughout the day, throughout the waking and dream states. Of course, we all fail. None of us are holding on to it all the time, but that is what we need to work towards. This idea that Bhagavan never even recommended sitting with closed eyes to do this. Bhagavan only said, do it always. So whether our eyes are open or closed, we're aware I am. So we don't need to close our eyes in order to be aware I am. Whatever we may be doing, we're aware I am. So we don't have to be sitting to be aware I am. So our aim is throughout the day, whatever the mind, speech, and body may be doing, we should be trying to the extent possible to hold on to this fundamental awareness of our own being, I am.
That's really clear, and maybe a practitioner can be fearful of one thing, is that maybe his life won't go on because he will be focused on I am.
Right, that fear is there, but Bhagavan has made it clear what is destined to happen is going to happen, and whatever actions we need to do in order for what is destined to happen, we'll be made to do those actions. So this is why this investigation and surrender are inseparable, because to the extent to which we're holding on to ourself, we are thereby surrendering the mind, speech, and body. So let God take care of the mind, speech, and body. Whatever they need to do, he will make them do. Even if we don't surrender ourselves, we'll still be made to do what we have to do. So we can confidently, as Bhagavan says, however much burden is placed on God, he will bear all of it. So we can all worry about what we should do, what we shouldn't do, leave the entire burden to him. Everything's going to happen as it's meant to happen anyway.
Yes, but
because of our sense of doership, we think, I have to do this, I have to do that. But who is this I who's constantly asserting, I have to do?
Yes, but maybe for a beginner, there's a sense of he has to try to see that everything should arise as it should, and maybe there's a leap of faith at the beginning.
Yes, but faith is definitely required. But we need to understand what true faith is. In some people talk about blind faith. That is not the faith we're talking about. But true faith, that blind faith is very unreliable, because if we blindly believe something, such a faith is a very unreliable faith. The faith we require is the faith that is born out of clarity. That faith that is born out of clarity will be very firm and unshakable. So that faith will come to the extent to which we subside. The love to subside, and the clarity, everything comes along with it.
Maybe can we say that the action that arises from this surrender, or when we release our will, can we say that is the best and the only action that can arise?
Sorry, I didn't quite understand that. Can you repeat that?
Can we say that the action that arise when we self-surrender, or when we release our will, can we say that is the only and the best action that can arise?
Yes, we can say that, but it's not really action, because action requires a doer. And to the extent to which we surrender ourselves, the sense of doership drops down. So the mind, speech, and body will continue acting as they're meant, as God makes them act, but we won't feel I am doing this.
That's like a flow or a river.
Yes, yes.
Okay, that's really clear.
Yeah.
And there's a question in the spiritual circles that is very trendy. Is spiritual bypassing. And is it a danger with this path, the spiritual bypassing? That is, we use this path to avoid emotions or difficulties.
How can we avoid difficulties? If we are to face difficulties, the difficulties will come and sit on our head. We cannot avoid anything. It's the only way to avoid is to detach ourselves from these things. Then whatever is destined to happen is going to happen, but we will not be affected by it. So it's a matter of detachment, detaching ourselves. To the extent to which we hold on to ourselves, to our own being, we are thereby detaching ourselves from other things. So the life will go on. The difficulties will. No embodied creature has a problem-free life. The very fact of being embodied, we have problems. We need to eat, we need to drink, we need sleep, so many problems are there. So we are not here to avoid problems. We are here to know what we actually are. So if this idea of spiritual bypassing, I mean, I don't know, if it's bypassing, it's not really spiritual. Our aim is not to bypass anything. Our aim is just to know what we actually are. In order to know what we actually are, we need to turn within. The more we turn within, the less we'll be concerned about these things. Because this body was born. It's going to go through certain experiences. It's going to die. Why should we attach ourselves to this and be so concerned about this? So this path is all about, well, the effect of this path is detachment. But we are not seeking to detach ourselves. We are seeking to attach ourselves to our own being. By attaching ourselves to our own being, we are automatically detaching from everything else.
And what is it like for when there's no seeker, and when there's no, at the end, when there's the self-realization, what it is like. Are there are still emotions or thoughts or
It is not like anything. If we can say it is like something, then it is not the real thing. Because, yeah, there is no separate individuality. So how can there be emotions and everything? There's emotions of a body and mind. But when we are completely detached from a body and mind and merge back into the pure being awareness that we actually are, then we go beyond all these emotions and perceptions and memories, all these things. Everything gets, Bhagavan uses the analogy of the sun that swallows everything. In the bright sunlight, everything is swallowed. He
it
talks
reminds
about
me,
he talks about in old days they had photographic plates for taking photographs. If that photographic plate is exposed in the sunlight, it's completely wiped out. It's like wiping out all the data on your PC. It becomes useless. So we become, that is, everything is wiped out. And what is real alone remains.
And if someone is wants to begin on this path,
Yes.
what is the first move? What do you have to find a teacher or a book or a video or
Well,
just what
we need to have at least a certain degree of clarity of understanding, because if we don't understand the path, we can't follow the path. So we need to understand why we are not this body and so on, and why we therefore need to investigate to find out what we actually are. So we need a basic understanding. The reason, as I said, when you asked at the beginning, who was Ramana Maharshi or who is Ramana Maharshi, I said he is our own being. He's our own reality. He appeared outwardly in human name and form in order to give us teachings to turn back within. So he is Guru for us. People have an idea Guru is a person, and therefore there must be a living person to be Guru. Every living person one day becomes a dead person. So a living person is not a proper Guru. Guru is ever living. Guru is our Guru is our own reality, what is shining in our heart. So Bhagavan has appeared outwardly in order to give us these teachings. So these teachings are the teacher for us. They're our Guru. That Bhagavan, in the form of his teachings, is giving us this clarity, but we have to put that into practice by trying to turn within. Some people, they come to this path, instead of catching the whole point is to look within, to understand what we actually are. They think, oh, a guru is necessary. So they start looking outwards. If you go to any real guru, he'll still tell you, stop looking outside, look within. So when we've got that teaching so clearly from Bhagavan, why should we continue looking outside? We need to look within.
The feeling of the I am feeling, maybe can we say that it's the Guru?
Yes, except I wouldn't say it's a feeling, because a feeling suggests something rather vague. I have a feeling he's a good person. I have a feeling something bad is going to happen. Or feeling, we use feeling about something that we're not very clear about. But the one thing that is clearer than anything else is the awareness I am. The one thing we cannot possibly doubt is I am. We can doubt everything else. We can doubt all this may be just a dream. It may be all just an illusion. But we cannot doubt our own existence. Because if we don't exist, I mean, if we didn't exist, we couldn't be aware of anything. So the fact that we are aware of so many things means the Only two things that is certain is I am and I am aware. And actually that awareness and the amness are one and the same. They're not two separate things. That is, being and awareness are one and the same.
It's the
So
knowing.
I wouldn't say the feeling I am, I'd say the clear awareness I am.
Yes, can we say yes? The clear knowing, the
Knowing,
clear,
yes,
yeah, the
exactly,
clear knowing.
exactly. Yeah.
Yes, it's wonderful. It's really
Yes.
clear, and
Yeah.
thank you very much, because you answered all my questions, and
Right.
it was really with a lot of skills. So thank you, and
Well,
it's really
it's
precious.
I have no skill. If anything useful I say, it's because by Bhagavan's grace, I've spent so many years absorbed in his teaching, because his teachings attract me so much, because it's so simple, so clear, and so practical. There's not a
Yes.
moment, but I mean, we can always be attending to ourselves if we have sufficient love. The whole problem is our lack of love, but we can cultivate that love only by practice. So Bhagavan's teachings are so simple, so clear, and so obviously true. If we think about it, it's just if we get the taste of Bhagavan's teachings, there's no nectar that can equal the sweetness of Bhagavan's teachings. And Bhagavan's
Yes.
teaching doesn't only mean the words, it means what the words are pointing at, which is our own being. So we must be constantly turning within.
Yes, it's not about theory, so it's about practice.
Yes, yes, yes.
That's really clear. And
When you say not about theory, theory means a theory is something, an idea that is put forward. But this is there is a philosophical basis, and having a clear understanding of that philosophical basis is very important, because if we don't have a clear understanding, we won't be able to put it into practice. But the philosophy is not mere theory. It is it's the more we think about it, the more obviously true it is. And think about it means not just thinking about it, but actually putting it into practice.
So we have to listen carefully first, or to read
Yes,
carefully.
we need to very closely attend to what Bhagavan has taught us. Then we need to make sense of it. It's not just a matter of memorizing the words. We need to understand what Bhagavan is pointing at, what he's talking about. So the careful study is what is called sravana, which literally means hearing. That means taking in the teachings. Then we have to make sense of it. That is called the manana, thinking about it, understanding why it is said like that, and what is the connection between this aspect of the teaching and this aspect of the teaching, making it into getting a coherent and full understanding. That is the manana. But most important of all is the practice. That is what is called nididhyasana. Because the clarity, when we first read Bhagavan's teachings, we understand something, but we don't have a very deep understanding when we first read it. It's only by practice that we get the clarity to recognize the depth of meaning and the depth of implication in what Bhagavan is saying. Because Bhagavan's words, they have a certain meaning, but it's not, he's teaching us not just through the meaning of his words, what his words imply, that also we need to understand. So this process of carefully studying, thinking about it deeply, and putting it into practice, this is an iterative process. The more we put it into practice, the more clarity we will have. So the more we will, more meaning we'll see in the words, more implication we'll see in the words. And the more we meaning, then our manana also becomes deeper, our reflection, our understanding becomes deeper. And when that becomes deeper, we go deeper in the practice.
And on your website, there's a lot of writings, resources, translations,
Yes.
and so the people who are interested can go and to have a look because there's a lot of things.
Far too much, far more than necessary.
Yes, but it's
Bhagavan gave us very few words. All my words are just talking about his words, but it really, if we understand his words, then nothing else is necessary.
Okay, that's perfect. And I will put all the links because it's I think it's a very valuable resource.
Yes.
And really, it was a delight.
Well, yeah, for me also. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I always appreciate useful questions, pertinent questions.
It was really a beginner question, but
No,
thank you.
But that's very important, because if we don't have the basics right, we're going to go, I mean, we can't proceed on this path without understanding it properly. So the basic questions are the most important questions.